Welcome. You're listening to How I Did That, a storytelling podcast. Let's jump into today's episode.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And can you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get more into your plant-based journey.
Okay, so my background would be I went to law school at Osgood, and I went into law school thinking I was going to do corporate law because I think that's what most of us think they're going to do later on. And after I complete my first year in law school, I took a year off because I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue in law school. I was going to law school in Ottawa and then transferred to Toronto. And during that year off, it's kind of when everything sort of happened in terms of veganism for me. So back when I lived in Ottawa, I guess I had my first introduction into being vegetarian because there were some really nice people from Mercy for Animals who were handing out pamphlets. But obviously back in the day, as someone who had never heard about any of those associations, I didn't even know what they were talking about. And it was the 2014, 2015, because that was when I went to law school in Ottawa. Yeah. But like I mentioned, that was literally a very first introduction into it. I have to say, so I have two sisters and a brother, and my two sisters went vegetarian long time ago, like something like 8-9 years ago. And for whatever reason, I just didn't follow on their, wagon of thought, and just thought that they were nuts for thinking, okay, we're going to stop eating meat all alone. And anyways, like you said, it's basically, I didn't have the information like most of us. So anyways, back in 2014, I have this person that just hands me this pamphlet, and I just take it out of politeness, really. And I go home with my groceries, which I have to mention were kind of like meat-based and lots of dairy. And while I was cooking my meat, which is kind of, oh my God, thinking back, I was like kind of bored, and I just started reading the pamphlet. And then I literally started crying when I saw the pictures of, pig moms that were cramped in their crates, and just the conditions that they live in. And I don't know, it was so horrible because, like I said, I was cooking dinner, right after a long day at school. And, after reading that, it was this situation where I'm like, oh my God, I just cooked dinner. And I remember eating that dinner and I couldn't even swallow because I just felt like such a horrible person. And I guess that's when everything started. I remember after that day, I told my sisters, you know what, I think I'm going to go vegetarian. This is just like horrible. Like, I can't do this. So it was just, a little bit hard because I had zero information. It was a rush decision, which I think in retrospective, I could have planned better. That's how my journey sort of began in terms of veganism. And I just remember for the first few months, it was just too hard to even do it because I didn't have any, information. And I was having a very unbalanced diet, which is what I think most of us do sometimes. We just think, okay, I'm not going to eat any meat, and that's it, but we don't think, okay, I'm not going to eat meat. What am I going to replace it with? Right. It's not just like cut on meat and then now eat lots of dairy, lots of carbs, and lots of unhealthy stuff that's not gonna bring you all the nutrients that you need on a daily basis. So I have to say, after only maybe 3-4 months into my journey, I remember just having this huge craving for ham, completely random. And I remember going into one of my classes, and then there was some random guy in the hallway eating pizza, and I was like, oh my God, I have to have some Hawaiian pizza. And to my embarrassment, after class, I remember going out and actually getting myself a Hawaiian pizza and just feeling like, oof, oh my God, I have everything I need here. So that was kind of I guess the first introduction into it. And then I just decided, you know what, maybe this is not for me. I don't know how to do it right. I don't want to feel weak all the time. Then I took the year off that I was mentioning, and that's when I had plenty of time to do all sorts of things. And I just started getting into nutrition. a lot and working out. And then the more I would research about it, and the more YouTubers I would look into that were either vegan or raw vegan, which was like unthinkable back then for me. I just figured, you know what, maybe I just did it completely wrong. I just chopped off things that I was eating and didn't properly replace them by something else. So it was basically during that year that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go raw vegan. That was like, I think, the best decision, life-changing thing I ever did. I only did it for like a summer, a little bit more than the summer. But that was just life-changing. I really learned about nutrients and portions and calories and, all things that were not taught in school or elsewhere. And so when it was time to go back to law school, when I transferred, and that's when I met Amrita at Osgood, I decided, you know what, maybe this whole raw vegan style is nice when I'm not in school or working or doing much, but, going back to law school, maybe this is not fully sustainable for me at this time. So that's when I went vegan, and going from raw vegan to vegan just makes you realize how many options you have, I think it's different when you go from eating everything and then just decide, you know what, I'm going to go vegan. Then you feel kind of restricted, but I did it sort of the other way around. And it was just amazing. Like, I remember Amrita would laugh at me because I would pack this huge lunch box in law school with lots of romaine lettuce and just some cooked bell peppers and that kind of stuff. And I basically, that's when I really went vegan. And then I met other lovely vegans like Amrita, and then joined different associations like Animal Justice. I got introduced to Mercy for Animals. I even got to work during my last year of law school. I was so involved in animal law that I reached out to Harvard University. They were having this research paper that they were working on to make some proposals for the Senate. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in that and do a lot of research for them. So I guess that's kind of my background. Once I transferred to Toronto and I got, in touch with the right people, I really felt like I had some direction. And my involvement would be more like legal. And I was also very involved with the Vegetarian Association. In Toronto, I would go to, festivals and fairs, and it was just so nice talking to people who were, trying to incorporate this lifestyle, or people who had incorporated it, but, they weren't feeling like they were doing it right. And then just sharing all the information that, I was fortunate enough to get. That was kind of my introduction into it. And like I mentioned, after I finished law school, then I went on and worked for this vegan startup company in Toronto. And after a year then, I met my partner who's Irish. And when I met him, he was vegetarian. And, after dating for a while, he was like, you know what, I'm going to ditch dairy and eggs as well. This just seems like it's so doable. And then now we have an 11-month-old baby that's also being raised as a vegan. So that's kind of my story right there in a nutshell, I guess.
First of all, what you said about it's so nice to connect with people who are trying to go vegan, to have that common understanding. And because you have so much information and resources, you're kind of able to give them that information and be like, hey, this is what worked for me. Like when you meet new people, transitioning. Growing up, what kind of dishes is your culture very heavy on?
So we're Mexican, and we moved to Quebec City actually since we were really young, and then moved to Mississauga, then Toronto. But we definitely kept, our values and basically all of our traditions. So Mexicans are very heavy on meat in any form and shape. Like I mentioned, I think the first person in my family to ever introduce us to this lifestyle was my sister, Fernanda. And how it happened is she was working with two vegetarian girls in her high school. And they were working on this project and trying to teach kids, what other alternatives there were out there. And that's how she got to know, you know, what happened to chickens in the factories and all sorts of things that she then, you know, told us at home. And we were obviously shocked and just like outraged. I think we hadn't fully made the connection then. You know, it's like someone tells you something sad that's going on for someone else or for an animal, and then obviously you feel super sad, you're so sorry for them, but then moving on, you know, like
Right.
you're back to your old ways. Obviously for my family, it was a big shock when my sister said, you know what, guys, I'm not gonna eat meat anymore. Because obviously without any information, my parents were just freaking out. They said, you know, how come like you're not gonna eat the food that we're cooking? Because my mom was the one cooking at home, and she would, you know, cook a lot of fish and chicken and pork and any sort of meat, really. I actually, looking in retrospective, I feel so bad for my sister because she had to take on so much, you know, negative energy back in the day from all of us because we were so ignorant really about the options. I remember even like my mom telling my sister, you know what, like at least eat fish because you look so pale. It's clear that you're missing some nutrients there. And, you know, like my sister reluctantly agreeing to it because she was still underage, and, you know, she couldn't really decide for herself back then. It's not like she was working and getting her own groceries. So yeah, that was kind of the stand of my family. And then as time went by, my youngest sister was like, you know what, I'm just gonna follow Fernanda's steps. She hasn't died just yet, so it means it's definitely doable. And yeah, that's basically how my two youngest sisters, you know, went on this journey on their own without any information, and definitely having a very unbalanced diet, unfortunately, at the beginning. But the older they grew, the more resourceful they became. And like I said, they reached out to the right people and the right organizations, and they actually got, you know, a very balanced diet after that. And that's when I went to law school, and then what I just mentioned.
Like your sisters, you said that they had a very unbalanced diet over time, right? They did their research. I think, I mean, I don't know, do you think this as well, that when people are trying to jump into veganism or transition into like a more plant-based diet, I'll say, like that mentality of all or nothing, like if I don't do this perfectly, then I shouldn't even do it at all, right? Like if I jump in, I can't even have one more piece of meat ever. And it's like that mentality that kind of stops you from like going forward, right?
Definitely agree on that one. And I think I especially saw that with my partner. Up to this day, he's never called himself a vegan because he says he's so scared of the vegan police out there. And you know, at first, honestly, when he first said that to me, I'm like, you're such a joke, you know, like
right.
That's so out of proportion. Yeah. But then, you know, as time went by, I was like, you know what, it's true. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens within this community is that some of us, you know, and I think we're all guilty of it at some point or another, we feel like we can point the finger if someone is not doing things the way we think they should be done. Mm-hmm. And so obviously that's going to discourage anyone trying to make a change in their lifestyle. But at the same time, you know, I understand those people that are pointing at others because, for instance, I see a lot of activists that, you know, are the frontline people there, seeing all the horrors and standing up for animals and kind of taking on the harder part of this whole work that I think we're all trying to achieve. And so obviously for them, it must be, you know, like outrageous seeing some of us kind of struggling doing what seems right, and for them to see it as first witnesses how things go behind closed doors, and for them to be like, oh my god, why are these people not seeing it, you know? So I guess I get just both points in terms of, you know, those people that think, you know, us vegans are being too judgy and that discourages people to make positive changes, but at the same time I kind of get why it happens.
Vegan police, quote unquote, it's really true, because sometimes I'll see in like on Instagram or social media where vegans will be like, you can't do this, or why are you doing this? Like, you consider yourself a vegan. Like, have you heard of Ravana? She ate fish, right, in one of her videos, and then everyone started calling her like Fishvana, and like she lost so many followers. I guess maybe she was eating fish, but otherwise her diet was more plant-based, but she's still promoting like a plant-based diet. I feel like they shouldn't judge her so harshly, because yes, you're right. Like she and other people, like they're not on the front lines like the activists are, right? They're not seeing what's going on. Maybe they wouldn't be eating these things if they were, but at the same time, they're still promoting more of a plant-based diet than nothing at all, which is still better. And so you really can't be too judgy, because everyone has their own perspective if you're not constantly surrounded by the slaughter and you're on the front lines, as you said, then maybe you won't make that connection as strongly as those people are. Yeah.
To be honest, I feel like the people that have inspired me to go on the vegan journey and everything was Fully Raw Christina, that you might have met.
Yeah.
She's just amazing, like hands down the best, influencer out there, I think, in terms of being super genuine and really, honest about her journey. I used to rely so heavily on Ravana, and I have to say, even though I wasn't one of those people posting horrible comments, I did feel a little bit, let down and disappointed to see that. I guess you become a little bit less judgy and hard on others when you struggle yourself. And I have to say, I felt like I mentioned, when I went vegetarian, I went back to eating meat because I feel like I didn't do it properly. And then when I got all the information, everything, my journey was so easy, so beautiful. I was so enthusiastic about getting everyone on board. And then I have to say, when I got pregnant, I was kind of, how am I going to handle this? And a lot of friends of mine were telling me, you have to eat meat or fish, or, for the supplements, it's like so much information you need to get, because a lot of the supplements and multivitamins have animal derived products. And I remember having this one talk with Amrita after I delivered my daughter. The recovery is just the absolute worst, I have to say, in terms of having a baby. I went to the doctor, and I remember she told me, just, keep taking your multivitamins, because, all of your nutrients are gone with the baby. But I do remember reaching a point, I like to say maybe 3 months after delivering my baby, where I was actually questioning my vegan lifestyle, because I was feeling genuinely very weak and very sleepy and, just not right. And I was just questioning this whole lifestyle. I was wondering, are there any nutrients that I really am not getting, even if, I'm trying to eat bits and pieces of everything like I used to do before having a baby, and it's just not working. And then I remember telling Amrita, I'm gonna be such a letdown maybe, but I don't know if I'm gonna be staying vegan, at least for the next few months, because I'm just not feeling right. And I don't know if maybe going back to vegetarian would help me in some sort of way. And, I need to be my best version for my baby that's growing. And, if I'm gonna raise her as a vegan, then I need to, do it right. And I remember having all of these questions and looking into other vegan moms that were giving, some useful information. I don't know if you've heard about Erin Ireland. She's great. She has 2 kids, that she's raised as vegans. She's been vegan throughout her 2 pregnancies and just has amazing recipes, I have to say. Hands down, super mom. Okay. But, I reached that point where I was honestly and sincerely questioning this whole vegan style. And I was thinking, what, maybe this is, and that happened kind of at the same time of the whole Ravana scandal. So I was like, what, maybe they shouldn't have judged her, because, I'm kind of struggling myself right now. And I wouldn't want for my friends or anyone within the community to point the finger at me, because I'm really doing my best. And I just, it's just not working. Thankfully, before I actually switched back into the vegetarian lifestyle, like I said, I found Erin Ireland and all of my questions were answered.
In terms of vitamins and what you were missing out?
In terms of quantities of food that you need to be eating, especially when you're breastfeeding. And I think that's what was taking a toll on me, because I breastfed my baby until she was about 4 months. Sometimes you can figure out your journey as a vegan, but you don't know what it's going to be like when you have a baby. Once you deliver the baby, breastfeed the baby, and raise the baby, right? That's too many steps ahead that you couldn't possibly anticipate. And then now, we moved to Mexico and we're living in a remote area. So that's another struggle that we've been having. And I have to say, probably during the first month and a half when we were here, we weren't fully vegan. We had to go back to some vegetarian products that were sometimes, dairy derived, some eggs that we had to have, because we were just in an area where, tofu, forget about it. There's no almond milk, no nothing.
What area of Mexico is this?
It's a small town that's 2 hours away from Mexico City. It's called Acasochitlan.
Okay.
And it's very, very, very countryside. There's not a lot of things that are available. And like I mentioned, I'm just being fully transparent here in terms of what my journey has been so far. After so many years of being a vegan and even just raising my baby as a vegan, you know, even when I switched her into formula, I looked for one that was vegan. So she's had like a fully vegan journey so far. But, you know, like I mentioned, we moved to Mexico about 3 months ago. Yeah, about 3 months ago. And for the first month and a half, I like to say, we were vegetarian. And, you know, I spoke with my partner and I was like, you know what, this is just giving me too much stress. I'm trying to find some vegan alternatives here, even if I have to make them myself. But it's just, you know, with a baby, you don't always have the time to make things from scratch. So we decided, you know what, until we're fully settled and we have more things figured out, let's just give ourselves a break and, you know, embrace the fact that we might have to eat sometimes you know, food that have some milk or things that have some eggs. We don't have the same luxury that we had back in Toronto with all the vegan alternatives. So we kind of made peace with that aspect. And then I'd like to say maybe a month and a half ago, we found suppliers that would, you know, bring us fresh produce and legumes and all sorts of nuts and seeds. Just having someone who will regularly bring some goodies from Mexico City, like natural sweetener and, you know, nutritional yeast and all of those essentials that we just take for granted in Toronto but are not available elsewhere sometimes. And now, you know, we went to like a full vegan diet and are just thriving again, are so happy. And yeah, I'm just so happy that my daughter gets to experience this whole lifestyle from like before birth, you know?
Oh, that's amazing. So does Mexico City have pretty much like all of the things you'd find in Toronto supermarkets?
Pretty much everything. So yeah. In our case, it was more like we were moving from one place to the other. And, you know, our goal was to establish ourselves in the countryside. Right now, we're basically working on this project to build a ranch that's going to be fully sustainable in terms of produce and other food supplies, basically. So yeah, that's kind of the project we're working on alongside, you know, raising the baby. And I like a huge farm, but without animals.
Oh, so okay, so you're like growing your own food.
We're starting because, you know, my partner and I had zero knowledge, and this is a project that we're doing with my family, with my parents, and my sisters. So we're all in this together, kind of trying to make this ranch self-sustainable piece of land, basically. So we're learning all about produce and organic produce, most importantly, the importance of trees and how to keep fruit, you know, lasting longer, putting it in, you know, those jars with, I don't know how you call those. I forget the name. Yeah, like pickle. Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Oh. So yeah, that's kind of the journey we decided to embark upon after this whole pandemic happened. And we were just not feeling right living in our condo in Toronto. It just didn't feel like we were at the right place. I personally didn't want my daughter to be raised, you know, seeing everyone, you know, in fear and wearing a mask and all of these things. So we just took the decision of moving to the countryside where we're very isolated and just living our best lives right now.
So with the ranch, like, is it always sunny in the areas that you're in, or what kind of seasons are it?
No, it's funny enough because the area specifically that we are in, it's in between mountains. So unlike the rest of Mexico, it rains all the time. So this is like pretty much Ireland weather, but in Mexico. Okay. So it can like basically rain for 3-4 days straight nonstop. Obviously, there's some challenges to the weather, but we're just really taking it one day at a time and just learning and soaking all of this information.
What kind of like fruits, vegetables are you planning to grow there?
So right now we planted about 200 fruit trees. So we're going to be growing apples and pears and prunes. Yeah. All 200 are like a mixed match of those three things, basically. And then we're going to have, basically we're working on building a greenhouse right now so we can grow different vegetables all year round. And then we're also going to start growing, we're planting, I should say, it's not going to grow just yet. But we're thinking definitely greens. So what really grows nicely in this region is more spinach, radishes, cauliflowers, all of the nice herbs like cilantro, parsley, They're super fresh here. Like you smell them and it's like nothing you've smelled before. Like, I don't remember ever smelling vegetables so fresh in Toronto, even when I would buy them organic.
It is such a happy feeling to grow something from the ground up and be able to eat it.
Yeah, it's like, nurturing, giving it all your love and actually seeing it grow, kind of like a child, basically. Right. So it's such a beautiful feeling. Yeah.
Also, I had heard that like in Mexico there was this whole like avocado wars going on, right? And like a lot of the avocados are coming from Mexico. Do you know anything about that?
Because I'm Mexican, I've always had avocados in my life, no matter the weather or the country I was in. But funny enough, in this area, they have local avocados that are very different from the ones that we know in Toronto. Because the ones in Toronto, you have to peel it off, basically. You just eat the inside of the avocado. But in this region in particular, they have an avocado that you eat with the skin, because the skin is very thin. And it's so nutritious and it's just beautiful. It's like nothing you've ever tasted before.
Wait, what is the name of this avocado?
I don't know, to be honest, because I just know it as the local avocado that grows in this region.
Mexicola avocados. Oh my gosh, this is so cool.
They have, they're very small.
They look
those are the ones. That's the ones.
They look like baby eggplants.
Yeah, but they're absolutely delicious. And just the fact that you don't have to throw this skin and you can get all the nutrients and eat it, and it doesn't alter the taste.
Looks the same inside as a regular avocado. That is really cool. Are you planning to like grow avocados as well? Because I heard that like when people try to grow avocado plants, like apparently it's very difficult and they die very quickly.
To be honest, it's not in our plans. We haven't really, like I mentioned, we had like my partner and I, like he's an accountant, I went to law school, so we have zero background in terms of growing things. And same goes for my parents. So we're just like learning from the locals and kind of seeing what would be easiest for us to do at first as an introduction. And then I'm guessing after, we get a hang of it, we're probably going to explore more things to grow. Like I said, for the time being, we're just focusing on fruit trees. And then we're going to start growing spinach, lettuce, cauliflower, and radishes, and a few herbs as well. But that's kind of it for now.
That's awesome. That's so exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Have you heard anything about hybrid fruits? Because I always, I think there was this thing that was like a cross between an apple and a pear. Are you able to combine different seeds to make hybrid fruits?
Yeah, you are. And that's actually how they come up with these huge apples that we have in Toronto, or huge pears that are, jumbo size and that they don't naturally grow in the land. Funny enough, so my uncle, he grows watermelons, and he was explaining how you can combine different seeds to, make them grow super big. Same for coconuts. And you can also mix and match, like, let's say peach and apple, or, different things. And that's, I think, what you call hybrid fruits that you're referring to, right?
I've seen yellow watermelon before. And I've seen a Saturn peach, which is like kind of the shape of Saturn. It's like a ring.
Oh,
it's really cool.
Maybe I'll consider it in the future when I have a little bit more knowledge and I know the right people in terms of seeds and, organic ways to grow things that don't contaminate the food that we're eating. Maybe I'll get more into things that are more creative like that. But for the time being, we're really focusing on the as little as we can so we can get it right the first time around.
True. Quick question. If you were to combine two fruits, what fruits would you decide to make a hybrid of?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if it's like biologically possible, but like mango and peach most likely.
So good.
But like I said, I don't know if that's like biologically possible.
I'm sure if like you mash up some seeds together, something's gonna come out of it. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All the way back when you talked about that very first pamphlet that you bought from Mercy for Animals, did it talk about the egg industry, dairy, meat, and like the leather and all the fur, like what industries did it specifically talk about in regards to animals that made you want to research?
To be honest, I don't remember all the information that was in the pamphlet, but I do remember the one I was reading and the one that made me cry, and he was just talking about the conditions that mother pigs live in. And, how they're just constantly impregnated and the teeny tiny crates that they live in with their babies, and how they have zero space. And, sometimes they can crash their own babies and, all those horrible things. And I remember the picture wasn't even that graphic, let's say. Seeing the face of the pig, how sad she was, like honestly, even just thinking about it right now, I could just start crying. I was just like, I don't know, there was like a part of me that just knew that wasn't right, and that there had to be some other way to do things. But honestly, back then, it was like that feeling, like I mentioned, we sometimes have, someone tells you something horrible and you're like, oh my God, it's so sad. You have a good cry, and then you move on.
Right.
I think what I learned over the years with veganism is that you always have that first person or first association or first whatsoever that plants the seed in your head. And sometimes it can grow within days or months. Sometimes it takes years, but it's there. And that's what I used to tell people at festivals when I was, volunteering with the Vegetarian Association. Sometimes vegans would tell me, I'm so discouraged because people are still not changing their ways. And I was just like, no, like, trust me, like I'm an example of how it works. Like, someone literally just gave me a pamphlet. I just took it out of politeness a zillion years ago. And even if I had sisters that were vegetarians, that wasn't enough for me. But there's always going to be that person that's going to like get to you one way or another. And there's no stopping after that, That same person that you have a conversation with is then going to see a commercial, or some other person's going to mention something about veganism. And that's how we all start, So we just need to trust the universe that you do that first action, and then the universe takes care of the rest. Like, you don't have to worry. Or
back in 2014, like, I mean, it seems like you and I almost went vegan around the same time, or like found out about it around the same time.
I'd like to say, even taking a step further, I have to say, like, I felt like when I was raw vegan and then transitioning to vegan, I was healthy, like actually just using produce and nuts and seeds and all of those great things. But once you spend a good amount of years being a vegan, and you have all of these like cheese alternatives and sausage alternatives and all sorts of things, then you notice that you start eating lots of processed foods that, even though they're vegan, they're not good for you, because if you're gonna eat them in the long term, they're as harmful as if you were eating a real sausage, because they just have chemicals and processed foods that are not good for your health. So exactly like you said, you can be fully vegan and just be super unhealthy, just eating, prepackaged things that have lots of chemicals and lots of fillers that are not real food. Or you can be someone who eats lots of meat and all of those things, and, be on the same page of, living an unhealthy life. So, yeah.
People always think vegan means healthy. It doesn't mean that you have to be healthy, right? Like you just mentioned.
No.
When you say you have a plant-based diet, that doesn't mean the same thing as vegan. Plant-based, right, that you're incorporating more plants into your diet. But people become vegan for like the animals, and they eat all these vegan junk foods, right? There's a term. It's like you're a junk food vegan, or you're like a plant-based vegan. There's other terms, right? Yeah.
But now there's so many options. Like everywhere you go, it's almost like a given. You have to have at least a vegan.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think there was just like one soy burger out there. That's pretty much it. And it's crazy. It's only been 6 years, and the amount of things that I've seen it's very exciting to see the movement growing.
Because I think you definitely need those, alternatives that like you say, like whipped cream and yogurt and cheese and all of those things, especially for people that, just feel like, I cannot go vegan because I will die without cheese, or without my burgers or whatever. So those alternatives are great, I think, as a first step and introduction. But again, I keep going back and forth repeating these things, but I think it's so important, like once you're vegan and you're planning on living this lifestyle, until whenever you plan on doing it, it's super important to go back to, eating natural foods. Yeah, it's great having some vegan yogurt, but if you can actually make it yourself with, I don't know, real coconut and, some milk, cashew milk that you make yourself, that's so much better than you buying, prepackaged yogurt that has so many chemicals in it. But I think this is more like me as a mom that now like reads everything on the labels in a way that I didn't do before. But
it's understandable. Like I would definitely read the labels as well if I were a mom, which is good. And you realize how many chemicals are really in our food, like stabilizers and preservatives. And I'm like, oh, it's vegan. And then you read the ingredient, like Oreos are vegan. And I was like, where's the cream coming from? It's like hydrogenated oils, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you transitioned to like being vegan, what kind of foods did you switch out first?
I just literally went from vegetarian to eating meat again to being raw vegan. And so when I went into veganism, then I was like, oh my gosh, vegans have so many options and things can be cooked, it's so yummy. Like, so I think it was kind of different.
Oh, you went backwards, right? Because you went directly to like raw vegan and then you went to vegan.
When I went into veganism after being raw vegan for, the summer, I noticed that there were certain things that somehow I was still craving, such as cheese. So then I just made it a rule, just plan ahead of time. So, if you're someone who enjoys cheese or whatever topping, then think ahead of time, what are you going to replace it with? And for me, hummus was my go-to alternative for so many years when I wanted something creamy and savory. And then obviously that was, at the beginning when we didn't have all of these amazing choices of vegan cheeses that are now available. But it was more like replacing animal derived products by something that was vegan.
Oh, okay.
Something that resemble in terms of texture, not necessarily in terms of taste, but just texture. If I was craving something creamy or crunchy, like I had my go-tos. And I just refer to all of these amazing people like Erin Ireland that literally had like, sheets of information of, like, if you want to bake something and, the recipe calls for eggs, these are like 6 egg alternatives, So yeah, it was literally just actually taking the time to get the information, which I think most of us don't do. And we're just like, okay, I'm becoming vegan and that's it. And then we're going to, hit so many walls in the way because we're not taking the time.
I think it's important that there are people out there like Erin Ireland, who you followed, who are kind of living the lifestyle you want, and they have that information out there. You can take and use it, because trying to do the research on our own is just very daunting when you're starting out. It's a lot easier to see somebody else on social media having that lifestyle, and you can get the information from them, or they have the resources and you can use that. When you went raw vegan, because I don't know if you had mentioned this earlier, but what was your reason for going directly to raw vegan instead of just like regular vegan food that was also cooked and raw food?
I think that was just because when I was doing my information, my research, I'd say about, nutrition, I somehow just happened to run into Ravana, who back in the day was raw vegan.
Oh, okay.
And fully raw Christina, and I would literally spend hours watching their videos and all of these amazing like fruit platters, and it just sounded like the real thing. I was like, oh my god, it actually makes so much sense that people are getting sick because of the junk they're eating. So maybe if I just go on this lifestyle and completely cut anything that's processed and cooked and just eat it from the source, then I figure, oh, maybe I can really, change my life in a positive way. So that was the only reason that the people that I so happened to stumble upon were just raw vegan. So, yeah.
Did you know that like you could eat cooked food or everything, or did you think that was what a vegan lifestyle meant? Was like just raw vegan?
I think definitely I got confused at the beginning. I think, when, like you said, when you think vegan, you think, oh, like huge bowls of salads and just greens and things that are untasty and like so bland and not good. So definitely I think that could confuse people for sure.
I wanted to talk about when you did go raw vegan, what kind of foods did you eat? Because I always see these like fully raw Christina and other raw vegan Instagrammers and YouTubers, they'll have like giant bowls of salad, the raw like avocado dressing, and big bowls of big giant jars of smoothies. Did you do like raw juicing every day? Like what was it like and how did you feel?
So I think the first lesson I learned is that you need to have enough calories on a raw vegan diet, which I think it's the most common mistake that people do. They just think, okay, I'm gonna go raw vegan, but then they don't consume enough calories in their day. So I basically made myself like a plan of like a meal plan basically, and for the mornings I would always have a smoothie that would be at least 1,000 calories. So it could either be, like a very simple like kale, mango, pineapple one, or it could be like a banana, date, cinnamon, water one. So I had like my go-tos that I enjoyed more than others, of course, but that was almost every time my breakfast. Then for lunch, I had huge amounts of fruit. So I would just pick one fruit or mix and match and then just make myself a fruit platter. And then for dinner, I had huge like salads. That's when I really learned to, eat huge, like humongous amounts of greens and lots of veggies, or sometimes mix and match with fruits to make it a little bit more interesting. But I kind of follow the model that Fully Raw Christina was doing. I literally just stuck to it. I was like smoothie, fruit platter, salad, and it just worked really well for me.
I think it's called like mono platter, where you have like one platter of fruits. I think
of one single one.
Only one single fruit, yeah.
Yeah, and it's honestly really great, and you can feel how your body really absorbs all the nutrients, and you just have so much energy that I think when I switched into raw vegan, I was honestly the healthiest I've ever been. Mm-hmm. I would go for my morning runs, and I reached the point where I was running like 10K every morning, and then coming home to my little smoothie. And that's why when I went back to law school at Osgood, where I met Amrita, it was such like a change for me, because I took that year off, so I didn't have to work, so I had complete freedom to learn about these things and actually put them in practice. But then going into school, into an actual routine, maybe when you talk with Amrita, she can tell you more about it, but she literally used to laugh at me because she'd see me with a huge lunchbox, because I wasn't fully ready to let go of the whole fully raw vegan style. Mm-hmm. So I would literally have a full head of romaine lettuce, and then some like filling stuff that I would bring in a Tupperware, like chopped fruits or chopped veggies. And, she would just laugh at me. She was like, oh my God, like, like the time it would take me to actually eat up all of that stuff and meal prep in the mornings, which is insane. And then also eating them, right? So yeah, eating them too.
It definitely takes longer to chew vegetables. In terms of budget, did you think it was expensive, like having to buy so many fruits and vegetables? Because if you're only raw vegan, obviously you're probably eating more raw fruits and veggies than the average person does.
It's definitely more expensive when you're raw vegan, but I think I didn't fully see it when I did it, because I was still living with my parents. Mm-hmm. So it was more on them than me. And then it's true though. But then when I actually moved out, and I actually realized how much more expensive it is sometimes, and especially if you want to buy organic. But there's again little like hacks around it, like always buying fruit that's in season, which I think most of us don't do. We know it, but we just don't do it, even if it's not pineapple season, and we just feel like, today I'm gonna have pineapple, like that's it, we're having it.
But those fruits have less pesticides on them too, right? If they're in season, they don't use as many pesticides. Is that true?
Not necessarily. I think you honestly need to, what I did was that I would only buy from farmers markets when I did it, and I actually took the time to connect with them and just be like, hey, like I'm gonna be coming every week because this is all I eat basically, and so I just want to know a little bit more about your farm and how you grow your fruits and vegetables. And it's more asking and the right questions. But I don't think that because something is in season, it's necessarily less.
I wasn't sure, because I thought like if something was in season, that it's already growing well in that season, so they don't need to put like extra chemicals on it to make it grow, if that makes sense.
Like not necessarily, because sometimes it's not even like, are they in season? Like, is there the right weather for them to grow, the right conditions? But there can be so many other things like bugs or some sort of plague that just comes and ravages everything. So people just make it a habit of using pesticides. It's not even like, oh, is it like season for watermelon, then we don't need to use them. Like they just use them because they don't want to risk losing their harvest basically sometimes.
I see. When you were researching about like farming, like for your ranch, so there are certain crops that you can plant next to one another so that you don't need to use pesticides, because they'll protect one another, if that makes sense.
Oh, I've heard about that. But for us, we're just planning on using organic trash, basically, to fertilize the land. Yeah, so
Like compost?
yeah, compost. Anything from this ranch or any ranches around, we're gonna be using and renourishing the land with it. I've heard also, like, let's say even when you store your fruits and vegetables in the fridge, sometimes if you put, like, I don't know, an avocado next to an onion, let's say, it's not gonna go all dark and, you know, smushy,
Yeah,
because the onion
to do with that. I don't know.
releases things,
Yeah.
you know, so it's true. So it must be true also for when you plant them, for sure.
When you were pregnant and you said that you went to Erin Ireland's like website, you got information from her. Is there like a specific vitamin or mineral that you recommend that like pregnant women need to be getting more of that you were like missing out on?
Well, I don't know that this is applicable for every woman that's ever had a child, but I think for me, while I was breastfeeding, I was really missing iron. Even if I was still taking those prenatal multivitamins and iron specifically, I was still not meeting my target. And that's what was making me feel super weak and just sleepy and not like myself. I just like went really heavy on all of the legumes that have lots of iron. That's kind of what I did. And what she recommended, because she also breastfed her babies before switching them into, more like lentils, I'd say. Lentils, chickpeas. All of those are very rich in that.
I thought it was like a lot of leafy greens. They had a lot of iron, I thought. And then if you like put lemon on
They
them,
do.
absorb.
They definitely do. Things like kale or spinach have lots of iron, but you have to eat lots of them to meet the target, basically. And at that time, honestly, I was like breastfeeding every 2 hours, so I was not going to be munching on salads or even having it in a smoothie. So I just wanted something. Yeah.
Okay. In general, in your lifestyle now, what kind of foods would you feed a like child that's growing like at such a young age? And what are your go-tos for like family meals, I would say?
Okay. For me to answer that, I think I have to go back to when I was pregnant. I have to say, if you just keep eating, you know, whatever you were eating before getting pregnant, like I was very big into salads, and then just, you know, making super bowls and having, you know, greens and, you know, cooked sweet potato and quinoa and all of these superfoods, basically. Somehow I feel like the fact that I was eating lots of salads and lots of smoothies during my entire pregnancy, that just made it so much easier, because when Valentina, that's the name of my daughter, when she was born, babies, you introduce them to solids when they reach about 6 months. And Valentina was ready for solids when she was 4. It was so funny because one of the first things we gave her was just like, you know, mashed carrots and sweet potato, and she was just eating them without like thinking about it twice. And it was just so funny to see, even when we introduced her to green smoothies, and she was just, you know, chugging them like it was milk or something. And yeah, so I think basically my tip would be just to, you know, keep eating all the healthy foods you ate before even having a child, because that's just honestly gonna make it so much easier for them, because as babies in your womb, they're gonna absorb everything you're eating, right? So if you're eating junk, they're gonna be pre-programmed to want that junk food. If you're eating salads and smoothies, they're gonna be sort of pre-programmed to wanting those things as well. And I think it all comes down to you know, living the example that you want them to take on. Because if I'm eating, you know, like, I don't know, vegan junk food, and then I want for Valentina to have a green smoothie, that's most likely not gonna happen. My go-tos for Valentina, now that she's almost a year, every morning when she wakes up, she has a little bowl of oatmeal with some banana on top. We also give her either cashew or almond milk as a drink. And then she has for lunch, well, it all depends on what we're eating, obviously. But sometimes she has sweet potato, other times she just has potatoes, or we've been introducing now lentils, chickpeas, and pasta into her diet, and she really, really likes them too. And then for dinner, depending, because, you know, kids are just so different, and sometimes, you know, one day they'll like sweet potato and the next one they will just refuse to eat it. So it's literally just adapting to whatever she wants to eat. But I make it a rule, if she doesn't want to eat any, you know, broccoli or sweet potato or any veggie, we just quickly make her a smoothie that has all the nutrients that she needs. So we just put almond milk, 1 banana, some peanut butter, some cacao powder, and maybe some agave for sweetness. And she loves that. That's kind of our routine right now that she's almost 1.
That's a really great example of like how you can raise a child to be vegan. In terms of you, like what are your go-to vegan meals?
So right now, yeah, we're really oh my God, here we have to make everything from scratch. So, you know, from like cashew milk to almond milk to hummus to vegan sour cream, everything we're making it at home. So I think lately we've been liking this recipe. Let me actually look up, because I want to refer you to the person on YouTube. There's someone called Rainbow Plant Life. Ooh. And I literally just copied pasted her cauliflower tacos recipe, and instead of doing it in tacos, I made it a salad.
Oh, I follow her, Nisha Bora. Yeah.
Yes. So that's been our go-to lately. So we basically make those cauliflower bits, and then we just chop whatever we have, either lettuce or spinach, because they don't have kale in this region. And we just also steam some broccoli, and then whatever we have, whether it's hummus or avocado, that's kind of our dressing, and a little bit of lime, and that's kind of our go-to that we've been repeating over and over again. They have a lot of mushrooms in this area, so we cook mushrooms on, you know, with all different ingredients, whether it's garlic, onion, and tomato, and some spices, or in a cream, or like in a soup, like in all different forms. But I feel like we're making it a habit to either have vegan pancakes for breakfast made out of oats or oatmeal, or just smoothies with fruits that we've frozen the day before.
Definitely, even for me, like I just have certain go-tos that are just the quick and easy, like my favorite meals that I'm just kind of used to making. That's good. One thing I wanted to ask you, you said that you were working with that vegan startup, and then you said that you helped Harvard, was it Harvard Law? No, Harvard Law, or like?
Yeah, it's Harvard Law. They had an animal, let me look at the project. It's something like Animal Law Project.
Can you talk a bit more on those two items?
Basically, it was a project with Harvard University, and they had a lot of people working on this. They were basically looking at the loopholes in the law, because, you know, in the US, you have federal and then you have each state. So in every state, sometimes, you know, like let's say California has one of the best protection laws for animals, basically.
Are you talking about the egg gag law?
No.
Okay.
So basically, this was more focused on trading animals and trading animal-derived products, selling among states. So let's say a company in California that, you know, sells meat, they buy cows from the state of Idaho, let's say, right?
So why would it be like good for them to stop trading across the border of states if they're still producing the same amount of cow in their own state, whether they're giving it to Idaho or not?
The thing is, like some states, like let's say the state of California, they're big on manufacturing animal-derived products or processing meat and then growing produce, let's say. But then states like Idaho and Kentucky, they're more big on actually raising those farm animals. So it's not like they don't have companies that process meat, but it's just the demand is not there, right? Okay. So basically what this whole research project was about was just to see, point at the fact that, let's say, the state of California has very high standards in terms of how, I don't know, the chickens have to be treated if they're laying eggs chickens for, let's say, this company in California to buy from them. Right? So they need to meet, even though they're not, you know, let's say the state of Idaho doesn't have such great standards for chickens, but California has them, then Idaho, if they want to sell to California, they have to comply with their higher standards. What those states such as Idaho or Kentucky, basically all the states that are involved in raising animals, what they were pushing for was, you know what, it's not fair, because if my standards in my state are here, why do I have to comply with the higher standards of states like California or Florida, let's say? That doesn't make any sense. So they were kind of pushing to make it a rule that other states cannot impose higher standards in terms of treatment of animals onto them as a requirement for them to sell to the states that have those higher standards. Okay. So what Harvard University was doing was kind of pointing and saying, you know what, this is unconstitutional. You know, those states that don't want to raise the bar for their standards don't have a say in it. And then we just had to look at different laws and different things everywhere, just to kind of prove that it wasn't constitutional for them to not want to comply with those.
Oh, so you were basically trying to make sure that a law doesn't get passed in which other states had to lower their standards for the states that already had such a low standard.
Exactly.
Oh, I see. So overall, you wanted to increase the standard for like animal welfare because, I mean, they're going to be selling the meat regardless, but at least you're able to raise the standard that they have to sell it to for now. No, it wasn't like a research paper along with this research was being used in like a court of law.
The project took about maybe 4 to 5 months, around that. And they had, like I mentioned, they had a lot of people in the US, and they never usually work with Canadians because we have such a different legal system to begin with. So for us to even understand how it works there, it takes some time. But I just so happened to make a connection. I don't know if Amrita mentioned the Animal Law Conference that happens every year in the US. So there's an animal law conference where all, lawyers from across the globe meet there, and then they give you all of this information about all the advancements in the US mainly. And you just make great connections there of, people that are heavily involved in animal rights and all sorts of associations. And so I had a contact person there that put me, through with the people from Harvard University that were specifically working in this project. And that's how it all started. And I was just able to support them with some research, but I wasn't doing any of the drafting or, correcting or going through everything before it was presented to Senate. For me, it was more looking into all the different state laws and classifying them and just making it easy for the lawyers that were working on it to actually present that information.
What was the outcome of that case?
Well, it wasn't really a case. It was just more presenting that information to the Senate so that, even if these states were pushing to lower the standards, that wouldn't go through. And in the end, those standards weren't lowered anyways. And that report definitely served as a reference point for them to decide that way. So.
Oh, I see. That's really cool. Like you're super involved on the forefront of being able to make these changes. And also in terms of the vegan startup that you were talking about, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's basically a Toronto company that started as a Kickstarter. It was basically, my all two bosses, who one of them already had a business and the other one was a professional football player. And they just one day decided, there's no vegan alternatives in terms of winter coats. And there's a lot of people in Toronto and just across Canada that don't want to, buy into the whole fur situation, but there's no other alternative that's as warm as that. And I'm referring to Canada Goose, obviously. So they just started this project. They got an amazing response from people who literally paid upfront for their jackets before receiving them. And that just sort of helped finance the production of the jackets. And then, it grew from a team of 2 people to now they're about 10 people plus brand ambassadors. So, basically it was just offering people an alternative in terms of winter coats. And I just, after finishing law school, I just started working with them as like a summer project, just like doing admin stuff, really not being really involved. And then I just loved everything they were involved in, all the festivals they were attending. And I thought it was just, a company that aligned with my values and what I was standing for. So yeah, that was kind of my journey with Wuxly.
How do you spell that?
WUX.
WUX?
LY.
Oh, Wuxly Movement Outerwear. So they have like different styles of jackets mainly for winter?
Yes, different styles of jackets and vests, and more also now rain jackets as well. They do promote, vegan jackets, cruelty-free, but also very important that are made in Canada, because most of the production has now shipped to overseas. So that's something that they're very heavy on. They want to keep jobs in Canada and just, really reconnect with those manufacturers, because the manufacturing industry in Canada really is dying, and we're just, importing everything now. So this company is really just trying to make, an effort to keeping production local and hiring local talent as well, and then just keeping jobs in Canada, basically.
That's super cool that you were able to get involved with that.
Yeah.
I think I covered like everything I had wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I think we pretty much cover everything. Yeah.
But yeah, is there any, I guess, last tip that you give to people wanting to transition to a vegan lifestyle?
Be gentle and kind to themselves, because sometimes I think we all put ourselves so much pressure, like you said, to just do it all perfect or nothing, like it's all or nothing. And I think, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to encounter in our lifetimes. We're going to go through different phases. And so just keeping in mind that, if you're switching lifestyles, there's definitely going to be things you're going to encounter in your way. And just being cognizant to the fact that, even if one day you just happen to fail and, you ate a boiled egg because you just felt like it, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. If you see the bigger picture and all the other, changes you're making in your life, I'm sure vegans will so much appreciate more. And, most importantly, animals, that you're choosing, in 99% of your life to, not use animals or consume them. And then that one egg that you ate, it's not going to undo all the amazing work you're trying to do. So I think just to remind people that whatever effort they're doing it and however frequent they're doing it, it's all going to matter. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to do it all perfect. And then, also for the people that have been vegans for forever, just to stay positive. It's so easy to go get discouraged just because we sometimes don't see like big changes are happening, but I do think they're happening. And everyone who's ever been in contact with a vegan or someone, doing some outreach work, they're going to see that, even just having a conversation with someone is going to plant that one seed. And even if you don't see that person turning vegan, a month after you spoke with them, it could happen in the upcoming year. So just to have that certainty that the work you're doing, it's just going to land in something great, even if you don't get to see it yourself.
It's very true. Like one step forward is still one step forward, right? You shouldn't be so hard on yourself. At least like you're trying, right? If somebody is trying to transition to a better lifestyle. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed listening to your journey, and I'm very excited to share it with everybody.
Thank you.
It was very nice to talk to you.
Nice to meet you too. Good night. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into today's episode, and we'll see you next time.